Several decades ago, an extra-dimensional storm broke out on Earth. After that, many mythical creatures from other dimensions were discovered: gods, ghosts, werewolves, angels, demons, elves, and many others. All these creatures are divided into 4 classes: mortal, legendary, epic, and mythical. Their abilities and destructive power far exceed even the wildest expectations. People belong to the lowest class, mortals. However, with the help of strengthening the body and spirit, they can increase their class. In addition to improving spiritual power, there is another way to significantly accelerate evolution. You need to hunt creatures from other dimensions and take their crystals, but the places where these creatures live are very dangerous, and going there is a deadly risk. An old man named Bai is in the classroom and calls by name a certain Zhou Wen, who sleeps on the back desk, closed with a book. The teacher, without shouting yes to the young man, sighs heavily and thinks that the last headmaster of the school had too high an opinion of this guy. The old director says there are 2 types of geniuses. The first type is Zhou Wen. The second type is all the others. Here the young man, having woken up, abruptly explodes from his seat and says that he intends to leave the lesson. He goes outside the classroom, where he sweeps along the entire corridor to the street to the exit from school. Zhou Wen walks up to the playground, sits down on a tile near the fenced-in volleyball area, and takes out his phone. The young man's life completely changed after he got this mysterious phone. He completely gave up on studying and self-improvement, and all this because of the game on this phone. First, you need to turn on the phone using a drop of blood, then click on the application icon. After logging into the app, you need to use another drop of blood to create a character in the game. By increasing the character's skills in the game, he improves himself in reality. This method is effective, safe and fast, less energy consuming. In the game, a character created by Zhou Wen fights with a mighty ant belonging to a species of mortal creatures. Bai thoughtfully walks down the street after a finished working day, and talks about the fact that there are many geniuses in the society who develop spiritual strength by the age of 16. But it seems that Zhou Wen is the only one who is able to perfect his spirit through meditation and asceticism without any help from outside. Initially, all the teachers and students of the school believed that Zhou Wen would certainly achieve success in the future. With such strength, it would not have been difficult for him to take first place in the upcoming combat skills test. But no one could have thought about what happened recently. A month ago, a girl came to the school where Zhou Wen studies, intending to challenge him, which caused great surprise among the students, because she had just transferred and immediately decided to fight with their number 1. Zhou Wen asks the new girl who she is and if they have met before, but the girl does not answer his questions and simply tells him to attack her. The young man says that since she is so brave, he will not stand on ceremony with her. He runs towards her with his fist ready. As soon as he approaches her, the girl kicks him in the stomach, which causes him to fly several meters away from her, periodically hitting the floor. The students who watch this do not believe their eyes, because as their first number among all, the newcomer was able to overcome in just a second. The teacher, coming out of his thoughts, says that Zhou Wen became so lazy and inactive because of Jing, a new student who defeated Zhou Wen. After that, the guy completely dropped his hands. Now he only sleeps and plays all day. Zhou Wen continues to play games sitting near the playground. He is very lucky in the game, because his character in the game defeated an ant and received a crystal for the defeated enemy. Crystals from those defeated by the enemy, absorbed by the player, affect him and improve skills. In addition, the user can see various characteristics in the game, which is impossible in real life. The parameters of the young man a month ago were less than now. He thinks that if he had perfected himself only with the help of meditation through suffering, then he would not have been able to advance in a few years. It is a pity that the crystals that fall out in the game cannot be transferred to the real world. Zhou Wen could live happily ever after if he just sold unnecessary low-level crystals. In the game, the guy's character was attacked by a red mighty mutant ant. The speed and strength of such an ant is obviously much higher than that of ordinary ants. He would have been able to defeat him if there was more time, but there are more and more monsters every second. A fangirl, Josie, comes to the badminton court. Noticing her, the guy hopes that she is not looking for him, because it is impossible for her to find out the secret of his phone. Otherwise he will be in for a lot of trouble. But he cannot leave the game now and leave the combat arena. Fan Ruoxi approaches Zhou Wen and tells him that she has finally found him. The guy asks her what she needs and why she came. The girl says that soon the last final exam is a test of combat skills and she would like the young man to agree to join her team. Fan Josie's invitation raises some questions for a guy who would be very much absorbed in the game. The girl tells him that she is trying her best to get a high score, so she needs a strong team and Zhou Wen is great for this. The young man says that he was like she imagined him a month ago. Fan Ruoxi says that she considers him like this and now Zhou Wen remains himself. In her opinion, he is still the only one from Guide whom she considers a worthy rival. Zhou Wen says that Jing will be perfect in his place, and the girl tells him that she transferred to another school. Fan Ruoxi says that although she has no idea where Jing came from, it is safe to say that she is already above the mortal class. Jing disappeared as suddenly as she appeared. It was as if she had only come to fight Zhou Wen. Fan Josie believed that the guy and the girl were familiar and she wanted to settle accounts with him. Zhou Wen says that he has never met her, so there can be no hard feelings between them. Fan Josie says that in this case she was mistaken in her guesses, but she also mentions an earlier question she asked about him joining her team. The young man replies that he does not mind joining them since she herself offered him. The girl says that she found 2 more members of the team. Now they will train every day in the evening during practical classes, so that during the check they act harmoniously and understand each other. Fan Josie leaves the playground, and the guy finally defeated the mutant ant, and the spatial mutant of the mighty ant falls from that. He reaches out to him, but he is attacked by 4 more red ants, and the game ends. But the guy is not sad and is going to look at the characteristics when he comes home. He gets up and then he twists, a red aura envelops him, and he bends in half. The young man assumes that it is because of the nerve crystal. Does it contain the legendary skill of spiritual power? But how can a skill be obtained from an ant? He gets the spiritual power skill, the fist of a level 7 titan. The next day, Fan Ruoxi brings Zhou Wen to meet 2 other team members. The other 2 cannot believe their eyes that Zhou Wen is one of the strongest students of the school in front of them. But at the same time they look at him with caution, because the guy has not trained for a whole month and it will be difficult for him to return to the previous level. Their goal is to take first place during the martial skills test, so they think Zhou Wen is not the best choice. One of the team members, a blonde young man, says that it is better to invite Chizhen and his old friend, who will be more useful. This check greatly affects the rest of your life. It is directly related to admission to a prestigious school and employment. This is a good chance to prove yourself and become a part of high society. In addition, their safety depends on the strength of the partners, so there is nothing to blame these young men. Fan Ruoxi says that Chizhen Yi is indeed an outstanding fighter, but she still believes that Zhou Wen is the best candidate. The blonde guy offers to conduct a small test, the result of which will determine whether he is suitable for them or not. The girl asks what kind of test the guys want to arrange. The young men begin to explain and say that everything is very simple, since this blonde youth is the weakest of them, so he will fight Zhou Wen. If Wen wins, then he will join the team and this cannot be considered a mockery of him. Zhou Wen says he doesn't mind, but it will still be bad if one of them gets hurt in this fight. The blonde says that there is a strength meter at school, but dry numbers are incredibly boring. They will fight and the one who retreats has lost. Fan Ruoxi reflects and thinks that Tian Xiangdong, the same blonde, uses the thunderclaps cultivation method. He just specializes in flashes of power, and the thunder fist skill is a good addition. Zhou Wen practiced meditation through suffering, but he never bought life force crystals to speed up cultivation. His family probably has money problems, so it's not surprising that he doesn't have a life force skill. The girl wonders what Zhou Wen's answer is to this. Zhou Wen still suggests using the school strength meter and Tian Xiangdong decides that he was scared and the guy smiles awkwardly, thinking that he is not afraid of a fight at all, but is afraid that he will just kill Tian Xiangdong with one blow. The 4 of them come to the school strength meter. Tian Xiangdong is the first to approach him and hits the meter. He has level 7 strength. Zhou Wen, watching this, thinks that there is a slight difference between this meter and the characteristic in the game, but he does not think that the differences will be too significant. His strength was only 7 units when he found this mysterious phone. The teacher passes by the room where the meter is located and wonders who can use this room at such a time. He looks into it, but does not hurry to go in. It's Zhou Wen's turn to hit the meter. He makes a hit, and everyone stands in shock. The force hitting him is 10. The teacher watching this is as surprised as the team members and thinks that really Zhou Wen has not given up. It turns out that he was constantly sleeping in class because he was training hard. As expected from the last director, a representative of the mortal class with a strength score of 10, there is no one in this school who could handle him. Fan Ruoxi looks proud of Zhou Wen, because he used an inch punch, a punch that is applied from a distance of 3-4 centimeters, while after the punch the fist remains in place. The young man uses the most difficult blow. He can get a 10 even without the spiritual force skill. The young man has terrifying power. Tian Xiangdong says Zhou Wen is accepted. But if he thinks he can beat him so easily, then he is mistaken. The blonde pushes the young man away to pass. Another guy, a team member who looks older, says that Tian Xiangdong is shaking too much because of his image. So he goes to the force meter again and strikes. Tian Xiangdong uses the power of Fist of Thunder, the skill of spiritual power, and its impact is 11 units. He asks Zhou Wen how it is for him, and he looks thoughtfully at the meter. The guy turns to Tian Xiangdong and asks if he will have to pay if the force meter suddenly breaks him. Tian Xiangdong assures him that if the meter really breaks, he will pay for the damaged property himself. After hearing that he will not have to pay, he gains strength and courage to hit the force meter again. Teacher Ku Bai is watching the students. Tian Xiangdong believes that Zhou Wen is pretending to be unknown, but what? After all, this device is designed to measure force. The model of this device is very old with a limit of only 20 units. But there are only a few high school students who will be able to knock out the maximum value, and those who can do less, even less. Zhou Wen hits the power meter using a spiritual skill. After the impact, the force meter begins to spark and flashes. The limit is a meter of 20 units, but this does not mean that it can withstand only this value. It will take at least a level 8 or 9 spirit power skill to break the device. Zhou Wen approaches Tian Xiangdong and reminds him that he promised to pay for everything, and Xiangdong calls him brother and says that he will pay for everything. They have been classmates for a long time, but now they are brothers because they are on the same team together. Fan Ruoxi thinks that the young man is much more interesting than she thought. In the evening, when the sun has gone below the horizon, Zhou Wen walks down the street and reflects. Fan Ruoxi reminded him that ordinary people who have received the legendary class consider it beneath their dignity even to stand next to mortals. And Jing, on her own initiative, challenged him, a mortal student. He had never traveled outside of Guide County in his life. What could he have done to annoy her so much? Then his phone starts ringing. He picks up the phone. His father calls him and asks him if he will come to his wedding. The young man asks whom he is marrying, and his father tells him that he will now send a photo of his chosen one. The girl in the photo is cute. Her name is Wu Yanlin, and her father asks Wu Noshi, how does he like his new mom? Zhou Wen asks where and when the ceremony will take place. My father says he will be in Luoyang in about a week. Zhou Wen replies to dad that there will be a skills test in a week, so he won't be able to come even if he really wanted to. He also asks his father if he has seen a metal cookie box in their wardrobe. The guy begins to describe the right box, iron. Each side is about 30 centimeters long. A cartoon bear was also drawn on it. This is a box of cookies that the guy ate often as a child. But cookies of this brand can't be bought for a long time, so most likely, this box is incredibly long. There was a mysterious phone in this box and he wondered if his father had put it there. Dad says it's not his phone. The phone did not belong to him, but to the young man's grandfather. Is this grandpa's treasure? His grandfather was a carpenter. During the restoration of the old city of Guide, he had to repair many old wooden buildings, so he worked there for more than a year. One day, a dried-up well was dug at a construction site. It was the middle of the night. Only a few people stayed to work overtime. A barely discernible light came from the well. The workers thought they had found some treasure and were about to get rich. But, unfortunately, it turned out to be an old wooden box. There were a lot of cracks on the lid, and light was coming through them. There was a phone inside the box. Initially, the phone was turned on, but immediately passed out, as if it was discharged as soon as they took it out. There were no buttons, and the workers did not find a charging connector. The workers were very disappointed and thought that someone just wanted to play a joke by planting a broken phone. Everyone quickly lost interest, but Grandpa threw it into his tool bag. Dad tells Zhou Wen that it is impossible to turn on this phone, because father did not know yet that the phone had already been turned on. He says that he took it to be repaired in his youth, wanted to exchange it for a couple of packs of cigarettes. But the master said that the phone doesn't cost anything at all, so he threw this phone into a cookie box. My father says that there is no way to turn on the phone even now. Who knows how many years they have been lying. The phone is either broken or completely discharged. After talking to Papa, Zhou Wen begins to think. The martial arts test will take place in the old city of Guide, where the combat skills test will take place. He decides that he should try to look for this well if he gets the chance. Days turned into nights. He played, went to school, went to training, lived like a Groundhog Day. A few days later, school children are frolicking, running through the corridors of the educational institution. One of the school children bumps into a young man whose aura just puts pressure on the people around him, and everyone considers him creepy. At this time, Tian Xiangdong is on the street, whom Zhou Wen invited to team up with him and help with training, but Tian refuses him, saying that his friend invited him to a friend. a team and he can't team up with it. Zhou Wen was worried about Tian Xiangdong's departure because it would be difficult to find a new team member at such a time. Zhou Wen addresses Lai Zhai, another team member who looked older than the school children. The young man asks Zhai if he knew that old Tian had left the team. He replies that he, too, will not be able to take part in the inspection with him, because he has reasons for that. Zhou Wen asks about the reasons, but he says that he will not tell, but he is sincerely sorry. Fan Ruoxi approaches Zhou Wen about to apologize, but the guy stops her and says that he knows everything and that he should apologize. Someone wants to deal with him, but the team members are also involved. He asks the girl to find someone else before it's too late, because she needs to get a good grade, because he will be upset. Fan Josie says she doesn't know who he crossed the road to, but that person has a huge influence, so she asks him to be careful. Zhou Wen is thinking about checking, because it is very important, but time is running out. Where can he find a companion he can trust? Teacher Q-Bai calls out to the young man and asks him to come into his office. The teacher says that Commander and holds a very high position. His real name is Tianzhou, but the young man says that he has never heard this name and does not know such a person. Q-Bai says it's strange then. If he doesn't know Commander, then why did he criticize a guy, a simple high school student, when he arrived to conduct an inspection in Guide County? Zhou Wen does not understand who this Tianzhou is, and the teacher begins to explain. The Commonwealth of the Earth is divided into 4 districts, north, south, west, and east. Although Commander Tianzhou is still very young, he comes from a noble family. In his 20s, he already holds a high post, is an important military official of the Eastern Zone. He has great power, an outstanding person. Zhou Wen asks the teacher if Tianzhou is against him. The teacher says that he is not exactly sure about this statement, but one phrase about how bad Zhou Wen is, and those who want to curry favor with him are ready to do anything. Zhou says that since he is a high-ranking official, doesn't he know that one careless word can ruin a student's future? And is there any connection between him and Jing? Q-Bai replies that anything can happen, but these can be dealt with later, because now the guy needs to find a team and register for verification. The deadline for submitting applications expires the day after tomorrow, so the young man cannot postpone it for a second, otherwise he will not have time. He says that there is a student named Lai Xuan in their school. If he wants to team up with him, then most likely no one else will stop him. But in return, Zhou Wen has to help him get a hire was using his power. It is Lai Xuan who should be the best in their team. That is, the young man should act exclusively in the interests of Lai Xuan. Even if Zhou can take first place in his team, it is better than not being able to participate in the test at all. Zhou Wen asks teacher Yu to contact Lai Xuan. The young man calls his father and asks him if he knows anyone named Tianzhou. The father replies that, of course, he knows him, because he is the eldest son of Zhou Wen. Tangzhou is Yanlin's son. If her father marries her, then Tianzhou will become his older half-brother, and he will also have a younger half-sister in Jing. Zhou Wen asks what kind of relationship his father and Tianzhou have, and he says that they are good, because the children respect him. After talking to his father, the guy has new questions about why they don't treat him very well. Maybe deep down, they are against the marriage of father and Yanlian. And Jing can easily defeat her, and because of one phrase of Tianzhou, he almost lost the opportunity to take the entrance exam. He is still too weak. If he was an epic class strongman, what would they be able to do to him? The young man returns home. In the past few days, he had been doing nothing but destroying monsters, mighty mutant ants. But apart from the crystal with the skill of spiritual power that fell out of the first ant, he did not receive anything else, although he had already lost more than 10 of them and there were no more left in the dungeon at all. An egg with a pet fell from the last ant. But as far as the guy is aware, mortals rarely have a companion pet. Mostly those who have already reached the legendary class have it. The egg splits and something flies out of it, inhabiting the guy's body, giving him terrible pain from which the guy loses consciousness. This is something that swears to serve until death. The young man comes to himself. His head is splitting from a headache. He notices a symbol on his hand. He enters the game and assumes that the companion pet has successfully hatched. This pet turns out to be a mutant ant. Zhou Wen decides to summon and look at him. He goes to the hall, because there is more space there, and remembers how to carry out the call. We need to think about the skills of the summoner and the mutant ant. A glove is formed on his hand, which is the form of a pet. It is said that it improves the characteristics of the user himself. A mutant ant most likely increases strength. Zhou Wen's house is not suitable to test the strength of the glove here, so he decides to just take a good look at it. The glove transforms into a mutant ant, which appears in front of the young man. The guy examines the ant and notes that he is cute in the game, and scary in life, but he has a chance to ride a mutant ant. The next day, he and teacher Yu go to Lai Xuan. The teacher talks a little about Lai Xuan. He doesn't like to flaunt everything, but he's not a bad person. Zhou Wen is only here for the exam. He shouldn't take anything else to heart. The guy says that he understood everything and knows what to do. They reach the Imperial Health Club, where the one they came to is located. They enter the lobby, where they are met by the concierge, who must take them to the second young Mr. Lai. They are escorted and they enter a huge room where Lai Xuan is sitting on a sofa surrounded by girls. The young man notices teacher Yu and offers him to sit down and drink a glass, but the teacher refuses, saying that he has classes in the evening. Hu Bai introduces Zhou Wen to Lai Xuan, saying that the guy is very capable, so he will be useful in the exam. Lai Xuan smiles and says that he fully trusts the teacher, so he will allow the young man to join him. Getting a good mark won't be a problem. The teacher says goodbye and asks the boys to discuss all the issues related to checking combat skills. Zhou Wen stays with Lai Xuan to get to know each other well over the last few days, to understand each other during the test. Lai says that he has heard about the number 1 of the guide school, Zhou Wen. The young man says that these are just rumors and it's not always worth believing them. Lai Xuan says that Guide is a small town, so where can a genius come from there? If he was a genius, and Jing wouldn't he have defeated him with a single blow? No coordination training is needed. Zhou Wen just has to listen to Lai and not interfere with him when the time comes, and then everything will be fine on the trial. Lai Xuan smiles and offers the guy to drink the whole bottle of alcohol. If he succeeds, then he can choose any of the girls sitting on either side of him. Zhou Wen refuses to drink and starts playing the game. Lai Xuan considers Zhou Wen worthless and the teacher humiliated himself in front of him in vain. Lai Xuan turns to one of the girls and says depraved things in her ear so that she seduces Zhou Wen. The red-haired beauty smiles mysteriously, gets up and goes to the young man. She bends down, showing her cleavage. She addresses Zhou as brother and asks him about what kind of interesting game he is playing. She starts pestering him, asking if the game is more interesting than the girl sitting next to him, but the guy does not pay attention to her in any way, completely immersed in the game. In the game, his new opponent is a flying ant with silver wings. The girl distracts the guy in every possible way and says that they can do much more pleasant things. Because of the girl's pestering, the young man begins to lose in the game, so he pushes her away, and she flies to the floor. Lai Xuan already spits out water because he refused to spend time with a hot girl, and still comes to the conclusion that that guy is very interesting. Zhou Wen loses the game and gets upset. Night is falling on the street. Lai Xuan sleeps after having a good time with one of the girls, and Zhou Wen continues to play all the while. He played all night, but he didn't get anywhere. Although the flying ants are very strong, they have not yet reached the legendary class, so it is quite possible to kill them. To begin with, he needs to at least get the opportunity to strike. The fist of a rank 9 titan can do a lot of damage to a flying ant with silver wings, but it takes too much time. The young man does not know if he will be able to combine a crushing fist with an inch punch, in which he is so good, since the character of the game is himself, improving the crushing fist with an inch punch in reality. In theory, the game character will also be able to synchronize with this improvement, so he throws the phone away, gets up from the couch and begins to train in order to test his theory in practice and find out how effective and real it is. Lai Xuan wakes up in the middle of the night and decides to watch the guy and does not understand what the hell he is training in the middle of the night. He understands that the guy is making an inch punch, but the applied force and amplitude are too large. Lee thought that the guy was hiding some talent, but in the end he didn't, and he decides to go to sleep next. But in his thoughts there is still an opinion that his new partner is an interesting specimen. Entrance exams begin and all students diligently write papers, because they have not been preparing for more than a year for this moment in vain. Everyone leaving the first stage from school is met by parents, friends, and loved ones. A few days later they head to the old town of Guide. After an out-of-space storm that erupted years ago, a rift appeared here, and everything turned into an interdimensional zone. Due to the impact of other dimensions, local animals and plants have also undergone various changes. Troops are stationed on the territory of the ancient city. Entry is prohibited without a pass. The next stage of the entrance exams, the test of combat skills, is about to begin. The school bus arrives in Old Guide, where it is met by a lot of armed men guarding the old town. Old Gourd looks scary, gray and empty, as if there is not a single soul there. Zhou Wen gets off the bus, looks around and comes to the conclusion that Lai Xuan and the others have not arrived here yet, so he decides to look around. His attention is attracted by the gate. He looks up and notices a strange mark on the walls of the entrance to the city. His phone vibrates in his pocket and he thinks it's his father, but his mysterious phone rings, which controls a man from blood. It is strange and surprising because it does not have a bell function and it has never vibrated before. Then why is this happening now? Zhou Wen notices that the phone has a camera app. He is thinking about how to use this app. Does he really need to take a selfie? He turns on the camera, but the shutter is not pressed. He starts spinning with the phone in his hands until he points the camera at a strange mark on the wall of the gate. The phone starts to peel and a new dungeon for testing is formed on the main screen of the phone. The ancient city of Guide, and the young man is surprised by this, but decides to try to play it while there is nothing to do, because he is waiting for other guys from school, and they have not arrived yet. He drips blood on the phone and enters the game. The character enters a new dungeon in the inner part of the ancient city. A creature from another dimension comes to meet him in the game, a skeleton soldier who attacks Zhou Wen's character. Zhou Wen is attacked by a skeleton soldier in the game. The guy is here for the first time, but the speed and strength are not as big as he expected. It's much easier to fight with a skeleton than with those ants. He overcomes the skeleton and it splits into separate bones. The helmet and mace of the skeleton fall to the ground, and a crystal falls from the skeleton itself. Zhou Wen is incredibly surprised, because a crystal with a skill fell out from the first skeleton. The young man clicks on the crystal in the game and the blue color envelops him. This time, it wasn't from the terrible pain, like the time when he received a crushing fist. This time he got the skill, the touch of the skeleton. The guy scratches the back of his head in puzzlement and says that he remembers that there is a skill of the spiritual power of skeleton soldiers. This is basically a low-level skill, but however, very little energy is consumed. You need to go deeper to test the strength of the skill. In the game, the character makes a call of a mighty mutant ant. He gets on horseback and runs straight at the skeletons that are hanging around the city. He wins over a dozen of these skeletons, but after going this way with skeletons, he got nothing but that first crystal. He continues to play the game and about a dozen more skeletons appear in front of him, and at the head of the skeleton of the horse sits the main skeleton commander, who begins to be enveloped in a red aura of aggression. The main skeleton attacks Zhou Wen's character and defeats him, and the game ends with the defeat of the guy. The young man sighs heavily, puts the phone in his pocket. He looks up at the gate and thinks about what a strong opponent he got in the dungeon in the game. This time in the exam, he needs not to bump into him. Zhou Wen turns around because he feels someone's eyes on him. The person looking at him turns out to be Ching, whose gaze is like an eagle, and the guy standing in front of her is a mouse, whom she is watching. And Jing holds out her fist to the guy and he thinks she wants to hit him, but she doesn't. The girl hands him a flash drive and says that Uncle Feng, Zhou Wen's father, asked me to give him this. And Jing is aggressive towards Zhou and says that it looks like his father tried so hard for his son in vain. It is pointless to waste energy on people who want to degrade themselves. She also tells him not to even think about telling anyone what has to do with the An family. There is no place for mediocrity and weaklings in the An family. Zhou Wen doesn't understand when he managed to become a part of this family. In his opinion, the girl is too hasty with conclusions. The guy is pulled out of his thoughts by the voice of Lai Xuan, who calls out to him. Along with Lai Xuan came two more guys who were members of their team. Lai Xuan comes close to Zhou Wen, hugs him by the shoulders and says that since teacher Qiu Bai stood up for him, he has nothing to worry about. He can just walk with him and leave getting points to the other two members of the team. Zhou Wen says that this arrangement suits him, because he will save his strength. One of the young men who came with Lai Xuan says that Xuan cannot worry. There is nothing outstanding in a backwater like guide. He will even be able to take the first place alone. They will try their best, there will be no mistakes. Zhou Wen comes to the conclusion that Xuan is not going to introduce these two guys, because they really are just tools for him to achieve his goal. A message sounds from the speakers that the exam will begin soon. Each participant needs to approach the inspector, examiner of the group to which the students belong. Zhou Wen notices Fan Ruoxi and smiles at her. The girl smiles back and mentally tells the guy to try and win. A portal opens and one of the exam observers approaches it. He says that the essence of the exam is to collect crystals of dead skeleton soldiers. The final score will be determined based on the number of crystals extracted. Finally, this man wishes everyone success and asks everyone to go to the portal. All students, one after another, enter the portal that separates the zones of the city of Guide. Where the students went, it was a dimension that was created by the catastrophe that divided people into classes. And so begins the most important test. In the ancient city of Guide, examinees are met by a lot of skeletal soldiers who attack the guys without delay. The guys also do not attack opponents with a finger. The two young men who came with Lai Xuan have no problems coping with these skeletons, and Zhou Wen thinks that there is nothing to worry about. But that's good, so he will have time to check the guess and takes out his phone. Lai Xuan turns around and sees the guy playing the phone again. Xuan believes that there is something special about this phone, as well as about the guy. Zhou Wen turns on the game and starts comparing the surroundings in the game and in reality. It is true that not only the city gates, but also the location of all buildings exactly matches the dungeon from the phone. It means that all the dungeons have a real prototype. Then the skeleton rider is also here. But judging by the already research area, the students are still far away from him. If they do not go beyond the territory reserved for the exam, then he will not run into this thing. Lai Xuan and his wards tell Zhou Wen that they want to move deeper into the city, because she has cleared the entire area of skeletons and they are not here now, and besides, the speed of their appearance has decreased. They say that if they want a regiment equals to learn the highest score, then they need to go further, and not stop at the result already achieved. Zhou Wen tells Lai Xuan that in his opinion, it is very risky to go outside the territory, because it can be dangerous there. Xuan thinks about the young man's words, but another team member says that Zhou Wen was just scared. He says that skeletons appear extremely slowly and chaotically. To secure the first place, they have to get out of here and kill as many skeletons as possible. They have a complete plan of the territory in their hands, as well as a map of the division into sections. Nothing will happen to them if they enter the buffer zone. Lai Xuan says his teammates' words make sense. He tells Zhou Wen that there is nothing to be afraid of. Even if something happens, these two will deal with the potential danger without any problems. Zhou Wen is puzzled, because he cannot say in plain text that there is a monster waiting for them ahead that is ready to kill them. He concludes that it is necessary to try again to defeat the monster with the help of the phone, but he hardly believes that it is possible. They still head to the buffer zone and the guy thinks that in the worst case, he will just grab Lai Xuan and run away so that none of them will get hurt. The guys move deeper into the city. They come across new skeletons on the way, but they are quickly overpowered by two team members, followed by Zhou Wen and Lai Xuan. Zhou Wen has been playing a game all this time, trying to defeat the skeleton rider. He doesn't really succeed. He dodges, jumps, but the rider still instantly kills him. He is stronger than even a flying ant with silver wings. However, it is quite obvious that the skeleton rider does not maintain high dexterity all the time. He only increases speed for a moment when he strikes his stabbing blow. Most likely, this is his spiritual power skill. After analyzing his opponent, the guy comes to the conclusion that this skeleton can easily destroy their entire team. A spatial crystal falls out of one defeated skeleton, which is given to Lai Xuan, and he thanks his partner. Zhou Wen tells Lai Xuan that they already have enough points, so they can go back. One of the young men says it's too early to return and why such a rush. The guy reproaches Zhou Wen for not doing anything anyway, so you don't need to listen to him. It's better to kill a few more skeletons to be safe. Lai Xuan says that there are no spatial creatures of legendary level or higher registered nearby, so he suggests going even further. Zhou Wen grabs Xuan's hand and asks him if he believes in the sixth sense. Wen says that since childhood, he has always had an unpleasant feeling if he was in danger, and his sixth sense has never failed. And right now this feeling is very strong. One of the guys is unhappy with Zhou Wen's words and tells Tom that brother Xuan took him with him to help him improve Zhou Wen's reputation. If you drag the team to the bottom, is he ready to take responsibility for the consequences? Zhou Wen says that the guide region is very small, so it's not unusual for few students to venture outside the borders. In addition, they have scored so many points that they can easily maintain the advantage by simply killing within the area set aside for the exam. There is no need to take risks and enter unknown territory. Lai Xuan says that Zhou Wen's words make sense, but the young man does not have time to finish because one of his partners, Jiang Hao, pierces him through with a knife, followed by another guy. Lai Xuan is still on his feet, holding onto his stomach, where the knife wound is located. Jiang Hao tells Xuan not to interfere with him, and he in turn assumes that the second brother sent him. Here Xuan's wound tightens and there is no trace of the wound. The only thing that gives away the attack is the blood on the guy's shirt. Jiang Hao looks at Lai Xuan in surprise and says that he did not even imagine that the younger Xuan, who loves planting so much, practices such a skill as natural invulnerability. The attempt on Lai Xuan's life was not successful. Unlike the life force skills and spatial crystals obtained from spatial beings, the cultivation method represents the basic principles of improvement developed by people themselves. That is why different cultivation methods determine different limits of perfection. Natural invulnerability is one of the rare techniques that allows you to immediately reach the epic class, skipping mortal and legendary. Zhou Wen had heard that only virgins could walk this path. If you lose your virginity, all your efforts will go to waste. However, no matter how you look, Zhou Wen does not look at all like a person who will make great efforts to improve such a skill, because he is always surrounded by a girl, and not one, but 3 or more. Zhou Wen's partner shouts that Jiang Hao is a traitor. He can believe he is helping Lai Mobai get rid of his younger brother. Zhou Wen says that 2 tigers cannot get along on the same mountain and he made his choice. He has no desire to fight for power with his second brother, but he can calm down until he reaches his goal and gets rid of the younger one. Jiang Hao laughs and says that Zhou Wen is to blame. There was nothing to pretend to be a fool, but his minutes are already numbered. Hao attacks Zhou Wen and shows his companion pet, an explosive snake. Everyone is surprised, because it is impossible how he, being a mortal, could get a legendary level pet. Zhou Wen says that all it takes is for someone who has reached the legendary class to voluntarily hand it over, even though it causes excruciating pain. Jiang Hao says that Zhou Wen is very smart. It seems that the second brother was telling the truth about him. Hao raises a knife to strike and says that the guy must die. Zhou Wen grabs the knife on the blade with his palm and starts throwing red and black lightning. A glove forms on his hand. Jiang Hao says he didn't think about the fact that he also has a legendary level companion pet. It seems that respected young Mr. Zhou Wen also has dirty secrets. Zhou Wen, fully dressed in black armor, says that he is not like Jiang Hao, he is better and would never use terrible methods. Zhou Wen towers over Jiang Hao, looks at him with a sharp look, the word razor. Jiang Hao, realizing that he will not be able to cope with such an opponent, decides to run away. Zhou Wen says that he will not be able to escape from him and runs after Hao. Zhou Wen tries to stop Zhou Wen, but he no longer hears him. Zhou Wen's partner, who was also injured by Jiang Hao, shouts at Zhou Wen and tells him to help Zhou Wen as soon as possible, but tells him to go first. His partner calls him a huge coward, from whom there is no use. Brother Zhou Wen shouldn't have taken care of him. Zhou Wen thinks that there is nothing he can do right now, even if he really wants to and goes. Zhou Wen and Jiang Hao have a legendary level companion unlike him. They will definitely die if they encounter a skeleton rider. He can only help Zhou Wen if he finds a way to defeat the skeleton general. He takes out his phone and starts playing again, trying to defeat the general. It is pointless to run away, because as soon as he starts to strike, he will die. The young man tries several times and at one point he realizes that his team has already encountered a skeleton general. He puts the phone in his pocket and comes to the conclusion that he will have to act, although judging by the battle, the general is very strong. The young man realized that there was a blind spot next to the general's horse where he could strike. Maybe he will still have a chance to win if he takes this opportunity. The guy takes a breath and begins to move deeper into the city. Zhou Wen, having moved deep into the city, notices that there are signs of a struggle everywhere. Buildings are destroyed, tiles are broken, which means that they are close. He notices 2 silhouettes in the distance, Zhou Wen and his partner. The guy runs up to them and asks if they are okay. Zhou Wen replies that, to be honest, they are not quite okay, because they are facing a real skeleton general who is too much different from the image in the game. Jiang Hao stands behind the general. The general is huge, his armor is gold, rimmed, and he looks intimidating and frightening. Inhuman wheezes come out of his mouth. Zhou Wen suggests that this is due to the properties of Hao's armor. Does he have another legendary level companion? It's good to be rich. Zhou Wen tells Zhou Wen that apparently his brother wants him to die here. The general of the skeletons begins to move towards them, saying that they are violators and they need to be destroyed. Zhou Wen blocks the pair with himself and orders them to move back. The partner shouts to Zhou Wen to help Zhou Wen. The partner flies a few meters away and starts spitting blood, convincing Zhou Wen and Wen that everything is fine with him. An explosive snake appears behind Zhou Wen and the guy says that Jiang Hao has finally decided to act. Hao smiles madly and says that he really wants to see how Zhou Wen will hold out alone against them. They attack Zhou Wen and his armor cracks. Zhou Wen assumes that if everything continues like this, Zhou Wen will definitely die, because the opponents are very strong. Wen shouts to Zhou Wen that he will help him and detain the monster so that he can cope with Jiang Hao. Zhou Wen says it will take him 2 minutes. Jiang Hao smiles and thinks that the mortal wants to face off with General Skeleton. In his opinion, Zhou Wen is inflicting a death sentence on himself, because he will not be able to stand up against the general. Zhou Wen takes off his jacket and says that he is ready to detain the general for 2 minutes. The guy begins to move towards the general full of determination and courage. Zhou Wen runs to the skeleton general and runs behind the horse. The young man smiles maliciously and the skeleton rider turns to him. The skeleton looks intimidating. It is very tall and its aura is suppressive. The rider attacks Zhou Wen, but he quickly dodges the attack and remains unharmed. The guy understands that the general's attacks in life are almost no different from the game. The young man begins to attack not only the rider, but also his horse. The strength of the horse is simply incredible, and the guy hardly starts dodging the frisky animal. He says that in the game the general's attacks are formulaic and predictable, but the real general is more agile. The skeleton begins to attack the guy even more fiercely, and he, in turn, dodges and tries to inflict damage. There is not a scratch on the rider. It is not clear if this monster has any weaknesses at all. The partner who was injured looks in surprise at Zhou Wen, who was able to detain the general even without a companion pet. Jiang Hao also pays attention to the young man, who does not believe in any way that this worthless squishy can restrain the general. Like Xuan tells Hao not to be distracted and attacks him. Jiang Hao tells him to attack to see who will die first, him or that trash Zhou Wen. Xuan says that he will be happy to show him, while in his mind he thinks that he cannot be allowed to fight against two at the same time. He must destroy that strange armor that is on Jiang Hao's shoulder. Like Xuan strikes a decisive blow and the armor on the guy's shoulder disintegrates into small fragments. Hao decides to use the explosive scaly snake to attack. Like Xuan says that he has finally decided to summon the essence of the explosive scaly snake. Jiang Hao says that he has enough time to finish off this annoying type, Zhou Wen. Hao swings at the guy from behind, and in front of the face is the sword of the skeleton rider, but the young man manages to dodge 2 blows. Zhou Wen sees a weak spot on Jiang Hao's armor and strikes, finally destroying it. Jiang Hao notices that Zhou Wen has a glove on his hand, and he says that he could not have thought that a loser like Wen could have a companion pet. Hao falls to the ground exhausted, and the pet is released from the armor. Like Xuan notices the released companion pet and steps on it, destroying it. He says that Jiang Hao is to blame for what just happened to him and his companion. The skeleton rider disappears into the blue flame, which means that he is just in a wild rage right now. In addition to the blue flame, it emits red, black lightning. His attacks become faster and it becomes almost impossible to evade them. So Xuan in black armor covers him from blows, but his armor is already completely at the limit because he has reached the maximum power output. The skeleton on horseback is now attacking exclusively the knight in black armor, and Xuan says that he will distract the skeleton, and Zhou Wen must find a way to deliver a fatal blow, because they cannot hold against this rider for long, because he is very strong. Like Xuan attacks the skeleton rider and restrains him with a friend, so he asks Zhou Wen to act faster, because otherwise they will both die here. His armor is completely covered with cracks and chips. Zhou Wen concertizes the power in the glove and strikes at the skeleton. The rider flies off and crashes into the wall, but there is not a single scratch or any other damage on the general. What Zhou Wen hoped for did not happen and the rider attacks again. But Xuan covers Zhou Wen with himself. The guy again shows his strength in the glove and strikes several times at a time, which causes an explosion. The young men have attacked the rider so many times, but there are still no cracks on him, not a single one. It dawns on Zhou Wen here, because the skeleton originally had a crack on the skull passing through the right eye. This crack was on the skeleton before the start of the battle. Zhou Wen and Like Xuan decide to take a chance and attack him. For the guys, this is the only chance to leave alive and return home. They decide to attack the skeleton rider general in an unusual way. Like Xuan decides to attack from the ground, but Zhou Wen from the air. The skeleton rider attacks Like Xuan with a spear, and the Black Knight's armor shatters into splinters, remaining only on the lower part of the body. Xuan steps on the spear so that the skeleton cannot attack Zhou Wen, who is about to strike from the air. They have the only chance of survival. Zhou Wen delivers a decisive blow to the skeleton's skull and it explodes, turning into ashes along with the horse. In a handful of ashes that remain from the skeleton rider, there is an egg with a companion pet. Zhou Wen turns to Like Xuan and asks him if he wants to take the egg for himself. But Xuan says that Wen needs it much more. If it wasn't tea for him, he and his partner, Mayan Tu, would already be dead. Like Xuan asks Zhou Wen to accept this egg as a thank you for the fact that they survived and everything was so successfully resolved, and Wen agrees to accept such a gift. Like Xuan says he has to warn the young man. He says that now Zhou Wen is immortal, so it will not work to bring out an egg of the legendary level and you should not treat such a gift irresponsibly. You need to treat it wisely. He also asks Wen how he got his companion. Zhou Wen says that due to his natural invulnerability he can somehow control a knight in black armor, but how can he control his companion? Zhou Wen hurries to reassure Zhou Wen and says that his pet companion is of the mortal class, not the legendary one. Usually legendary level creatures are stronger than mortal creatures, but the weaker the creature, the harder it is for it to form an egg. This means that eggs with mortal level companions are much rarer than legendary ones, so Zhou Wen is lucky. Zhou Wen asks Zhou Wen what to do with Zhang Hao. They can leave a lifeless body in the middle of an ancient city, but Zhou Wen says that he asked for it and he will settle everything. He tells Zhou Wen not to worry. When they get out of here, one can safely apply to any university, because Zhou Wen will make sure that he is accepted into any of them. 3 young men, Zhou Wen, Zhou Wen and Manhwa pass through the portal, leaving the old city. Manhwa is handed over to the doctors, and the other 2 say goodbye and go home. Zhou Wen gets off the bus and feels cold. He assumes that he has developed anemia due to a large blood loss. He thinks that he should eat goji berries and brown sugar because they contain a lot of iron, which he needs because of blood loss. Zhou Wen, hovering in his thoughts, stumbles upon a man lying on the road, thinking that he has stumbled upon a corpse. But the lying man makes a sound, which means he is still alive. He helps the man get up and sit on the bench, asking if everything is fine with him. The gray-haired man replies that he is fine, just an old illness reminded him of itself after a while. Zhou Wen says it's good and says goodbye to a new acquaintance. The man stops him and says that their meeting is the will of fate, so he offers to talk a little more. The young man says that he is not very good at conversations, but his new acquaintance smiles and says that he will just ask him a few questions. Zhou Wen says he is ready to answer questions. The old man smiles and asks the first most strange question. Does a guy like girls with big or small breasts? Zhou Wen sighs heavily and thinks about what he signed up for. Zhou Wen scratches the back of his head and imagines 2 girls with different breast sizes in his head. He replies that he is more attracted to girls with small breasts. The old man laughs and says that he too. In his opinion, girls with small breasts are the best. Only immature youngsters like women who look like cash cows. If the chest is too big, then it is much more difficult to maintain balance during a fight. The next question from the old man, a gentle and affectionate girl or a brash and sarcastic one? Zhou Wen doesn't understand why to ask such a strange question. Obviously, a normal person will choose a cutie, not a vixen. But if he keeps saying what the old man wants to hear, then this eternal chatter will never end. The guy really wants to get home as soon as possible, wash, change clothes, eat and play. He replies that he would choose a brash and sarcastic one. The old man's eyes light up and he says that Zhou Wen and definitely kindred spirits. It is such women who interest and fascinate. Gentle and cute are as boring as possible and you want to have fun with them. He says he didn't expect that Zhou Wen, at such a young age, was already so well versed in women. But Wen does not understand who will choose a vixen at all, and Jing pops up in his head, who beat him at their first meeting. The old man says that it is rare to meet someone with such good taste and the guy in front of him is definitely an outstanding person. Zhou Wen asks the old man where he lives and whether he needs to be escorted to the scrap yard. The old man does not listen to the guy and tells him that the body is the main thing that is needed to conquer the girl. He has so little kai and vitality. Even his good taste will not help here. The old man says that he feels the guy's anger towards him, but he says that he will help him improve his method of cultivating spiritual power. The young man stands without understanding and looks at the old man. The old man laughs and says that he just needs to figure it out and he guarantees that with the help of his method of cultivating spiritual power, the guy will be able to make any problematic girl absolutely submissive. Zhou Wen says that he is grateful for such a valuable gift, but he cannot accept it because he already uses a different method, and not the method of conquering women. The old man changes his face and says that meditation through suffering is nothing. The heavenly demon treatise may not be a first-class technique, but it is far superior to meditation through suffering. Zhou Wen asks the elder how he knows that he is improving with this method. The old man says that the guy looks like he has very little vitality, but his body is healthy and strong. Such a result can be achieved through meditation through suffering. It's good that she only recently started using this technique. If he doesn't stop doing this nonsense, she will destroy him, so the old man asks to take the scroll and learn the method he talked about. But Zhou Wen refuses. The guy thanks the old man for his kindness, but they just happen to meet, so he can accept such a valuable gift. Besides, he never asked about the treatise of the heavenly demon. The guy says goodbye to the old man and turns around. He assumes that the old man is a fraud, but if not, it means that he is going to give such a valuable thing to a person he has just met. Therefore, it is difficult to say what is on his mind. The young man does not go far when he is told to stop in an imperative tone. He freezes in place and cannot take a single step. The old man pulls him to himself. The old man's eyes turn red and he tells the young man that none of those who refused him, Jing Daoxian, survived. Zhou Wen says the name is familiar to him. The name Jing Daoxian is recorded in the history books. During the Great Chaos due to the interdimensional storm, the most cold-blooded and bloodthirsty man in history was born. This is a demon who has washed the Commonwealth with blood. He killed 27 heroes who had reached the epic class, one after the other. He was all washed in blood, letting out a bloody ocean. Jing Daoxian gets up from the bench and approaches the guy. Does he want to accept the gift now? Zhou Wen says he wants to, but Strick says that even though the guy said he agreed, his heart screams that it doesn't want to learn the skill of this demon. Zhou Wen doesn't understand what kind of nonsense the old man is talking. If he learns this skill, the Commonwealth will want to arrest him for having an affair with the Demon King. The old man calms down and says that even if he gives the guy the method, he will not be able to train, but he has another interesting method in store. But Jing Daoxian again makes a stern face and asks the young man if he will again refuse the kindness of the old man. The guy says no and the old man gives him a training scroll. Daoxian leaves and the young man is left alone, hoping that he will not be watching him from afar. The guy sneezes and decides that he needs to go home faster before he gets sick. Along the way, he sees people in uniform coming to meet him, who are looking for someone. These people turn out to be members of the Commonwealth who went out in search of Jing Daoxian. But this does not concern Zhou Wen, so he goes home without looking back. Upon arrival, he immediately takes a hot shower to warm up and wash off the dust and blood. After getting out of the shower, he reflects on a series of strange events that happened to him literally in one day. First there was an attempt on Lai Xuan, and now there is also a meeting with the legendary villain, Jing Daoxian. And the only thing the guy wants is to play games calmly and not get into all sorts of scrapes. He almost died twice that day and was wildly tired of it all. He comes into the room and looks at the egg with the pet and the method that the old man gave him. The young man cannot come to an opinion about whether this method is a curse or a blessing. Zhou Wen is wildly tired, so he decides to think about it tomorrow, and now it's time to go to bed. He lies down without even spreading the bed, falling asleep as soon as he closed his eyes. In his dream, he dreams of hundreds of hands pulling him somewhere and he wakes up in a cold sweat. He feels bad, his head is splitting and he is sick, so he runs to the toilet. He does not understand what is happening, but looks at the method on which the letters appear, and it is written the Lost Sutra of Immortality. Zhou Wen assumes that it was because of her that he became ill. Zhou Wen approaches the box with the sutra and picks it up. He examines her and comes to the conclusion that there is nothing unusual about her and his condition is most likely due to anemia and stress, so he goes to sleep further. He wakes up with the first rays of the sun, sometimes still rises from the horizon. Clarity of consciousness returned to the young man and the discomfort binding his body disappeared. Zhou Wen says that since he has already woken up and is not going to sleep anymore, then he can play and pass the time pleasantly. The guy takes out his phone and drips blood on it to start the game. His character is still standing in front of the boss, which is the skeleton general. Wen thinks that the monsters from the game still have no effect on each other in reality, but this is not bad, because he can try to defeat the enemy again. He loses in battle and the general comes out victorious. A tired guy lies down on the bed and talks out loud about the fact that the boss in the game is much weaker than in reality. But without the resiliency of the knight in black armor, he will be able to defeat the general only if he calculates his every move. But in any case, there are still a few days before the announcement of the results of the skill check, so he has time to try to kill the general in the game. But there is one problem. He does not know how much blood he will need to spend until he overcomes this knight, so you need to find a way to quickly make up for the blood loss. Zhou Wen decides to find the answer to this question on the internet, but there are too many search results, so he decides that he will just drink water with brown sugar, but it's still better not to die so often in the game. If he decides to play the game all this time and not go out, then he needs to buy a lot of food. So he gets dressed and goes to the supermarket, where he buys a lot of instant noodles. Wen played for several days and finally managed to defeat the general. A level 13 spatial crystal falls from the defeated boss, increasing the speed, but the character's characteristic did not increase to 13 and remained 9, as it was. It seems that 9 is the maximum limit for a mortal who uses meditation through suffering. Zhou Wen is a little saddened by this, because he thought that he would be able to reach the legendary class through meditation. It's just as Jing Daoxian said, meditation through suffering is nothing compared to natural invulnerability. But where can he find a higher class method? He can't study the one that the old man gave him. Then he remembers the flash drive that Jing gave him. He inserts the flash drive into the computer and shooting at the sun is displayed to him. Shooting at the sun, as well as natural invulnerability, is a cultivation method with which you can reach the epic class and even higher. Her main specialization is attack. Besides, the requirements are not as strict as for natural invulnerability. This is clearly a family legacy of someone from the Commonwealth, but how could his father get his hands on it? He assumes that the father took advantage of the On family's connections, and he definitely had to pay dearly for it. The young man calls his dad and immediately asks if everything is fine with him and if all his limbs are in place. The father, who did not expect such pressure from his son, says to him that the brat really wanted to get, for which he curses his father. Zhou Wen on the other side of the phone thinks that everything is fine with his father, judging by his mood. Wen says that he has a serious conversation with dad and he asks how he got shooting at the sun. The father does not understand what his son is talking about, and Wen says that Jing gave him this teaching, saying that it was from the father. But my father says that he is not interested in cultivation in any way, so he could not have such a thing. Zhou Wen sighs heavily and wonders why Jing said it was from his father, and things are getting even more confusing than they were before. The father assumes that the girl just wanted to make a gift to her new stepbrother. Wen resets the call, and the father is outraged by this, but still he decides to find out why Jing did it. The guy is lying in the room and hovers in thought. His father has a good opinion of the Yin family, but first Jing provoked him at school, and then he almost dropped out of the exam because of Commander, and then his stepsister decides to give him such a rare technique as shooting at the sun. He thinks that it will be stupid to improve with this method until everything becomes clear, because the motives of those people are not clear to him in any way. First aggression, and then gifts, which is very unusual. Zhou Wen falls asleep and his hands are pulled deep again, and he dismisses the idea that it is because of anemia. He wakes up and feels sick again, blames the demon Jing Daixang for everything. He can't go on like this anymore, because it is the same thing every night. He urgently needs to come up with something and somehow solve this problem. His gaze falls on the box that the old man gave him. Wen thinks about whether his health problems can be solved with this thing. He opens it and the writing appears there. Golden letters appear in the open box, which envelop the guy. He sits down in the lotus position and begins to reflect. He reads and says that now he understands what the connection is between the Kai energy and the magnetic field of the human body. The beginning of this teaching is very similar to the introduction to the cultivation method. In other words, to the theoretical basis in training. Zhou Wen studied the writing for so long that he did not notice how time flew by and the feeling of hunger came. He decides to eat, so he goes to the kitchen, where he tells himself ramen. He eats every last drop and then decides to go and continue reading. But then he realizes that he does not remember where he stopped and where he needs to continue reading, so he decides to read everything again. He starts reading and can't figure out what the hell is going on, because he literally read the letters 30 minutes ago, and now he seems to see them for the first time. Even if he has a bad memory, he couldn't forget everything instantly. Wen begins to read about Kai energy and the human body, but then he decides to check if he turned off the light in the kitchen. He returns to the room and realizes that he has again forgotten everything about what he read just a minute ago. Zhou Wen concentrates as much as possible and begins to read, but all in vain, because he somehow managed to distract himself from reading anyway. Even stranger is that everything he has read flies out of his head if he distracts for even a second. But he is not going to give up so easily. He decides to copy the writing by hand into a notebook. But as soon as he takes a pen in his hand, he immediately forgets what he was going to write. Wen takes out his phone to take a picture of the writing, then the phone's camera does not recognize the text. These writings are really very strange. The Lost Sutra of Immortality raises many questions. The young man thinks about what will happen if he leaves this box somewhere far, far away. Will he be able to get rid of these nightmares and sleep paralysis? Zhou Wen's phone rings, but the caller's number is not displayed. He answers and the caller asks him if Zhou Wen has decided which university he will go to. The caller turns out to be Lai Xuan, but Wen completely forgot that today they are announcing the results of the test, where Zhou Wen took the honorable second place. Xuan asks him if he wants to go to the same university as him. Zhou Wen asks which university Lai Xuan is going to enroll in, and he replies that his goal is to enroll in one of the most prestigious universities, Xiang. Not so long ago, Xian discovered an interdimensional area and interesting creatures, so this is a really good choice. But that is not the task. Xian University is located in Luoyang, which is the sphere of influence of the Yin family, with whom Zhou Wen does not have the best relations. Zhou Wen is playing a game where he fights flying ants with silver wings. The guy does not understand why these ants cause him difficulties, because he should have already made significant progress. These ants have great speed, they can also fly. How can they be defeated quickly? He has been playing the game for so long that he already has huge bags and bruises under his eyes due to lack of sleep. Someone knocks on him, so he goes to the entrance and opens the door, behind which Like Xuan turns out to be. He comes into the house uninvited and purely milking the formalities asks for forgiveness for the intrusion and disturbance. Zhou Wen asks him why he came to him. He said that he needed time to think about entering this university, but Xuan does not let him go and gives him documents that contain secret information about the university. Like Xuan shows a line that talks about new interdimensional beings in the form of internal organs, but Zhou Wen does not understand such admiration of his newfound comrade. Like Xuan says that doesn't Wen really understand how unique this companion pet is. For example, the heart. If his heart is destroyed, then this creature can immediately become his replacement, and this is equivalent to a second life. Many people dream about it, because such companion pets are extremely rare. Zhou Wen says he realized how unique these creatures are. The area where these creatures are located belongs to Xian, and if they become his students, they can somehow interact with them. University enrollment is limited, and selection is extremely difficult. After listening to Like Xuan, Zhou Wen says that he has made a decision and wants to go to this university, and he also thinks that he will just need to avoid Jing. Xuan says that the Yin family also goes there. He notices Zhou Wen's confusion and asks him if he was scared. Zhou Wen says he has nothing to fear from them. He takes out his phone and writes an application for admission. Like Xuan tells him to pack his things, because he will immediately go with him to Luoyang. At the same time, members of the Commonwealth are viewing surveillance cameras on the day Jing Daxiang and Zhou Wen met. Now they have a goal, to find the guy who was in contact with Jing Daxiang, and we need to find him immediately.